So I just picked random ones I wanted to see. I did one in New York, one in New Jersey, and then France and Spain and Portugal. And just I sort of wanted to have a year off anyway. So I was surprised the seagrass grew in about 2 months. And
Really?
I was like, like long seagrass.
You know, water levels are rising. You'd know that, aren't you, with your numericals sort of thing? They are definitely rising. Is that correct?
This model's doing what this did in these circumstances. Let's put a huge wave on here and see what happens to the shoreline or to a structure that we make, etc.
Welcome to the Green Room, your backstage pass to the world of surfing. I'm your host, surf MC and commentator Terry Tappa, diving into epic wins, crushing fails, and wild stories with surfing's biggest names. So wax up, paddle out, and join us in the Green Room, where the surf chat never goes flat. Yeah, folks, welcome to the Green Room. Now, today, I've got James Lewis. I've known James since he was a teenager, competing in events at the pro junior level. A junior competitive lifesaver as a kid, one of Australia's top junior surfers, and competing in air show events in the early 2000s. James then moved on to university, and in 2004, he graduated from Griffith Uni with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, majoring in coastal engineering. Getting back to the workforce, originally as a lifeguard, but then as an engineer for the Gold Coast City Council, he then found his dream position in coastal engineering. James has his roots firmly planted in Burleigh Heads, a former president of Burleigh Board Riders, and a family man with his wife Lauren and their children Mason and Gretchen. James knows about surfing, the coastal environment, and is putting it to good use. Welcome to the Green Room, James.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, I know a lot about you, but, mate, I don't know much about your younger days. How, where were you born and all that sort of thing?
Okay. Well, yeah, there was a few things there that I never did the junior series, never did that. I didn't start surfing till I was 16.
I thought I commentated in the pro junior at Burleigh.
No, I didn't start surfing until I was 16.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, I was very much a clubby growing up, but earlier than that, I was born in Sydney. We lived on the hill at DY.
Oh, that's a pretty cool spot.
We were about 2, and I think my sister got sick, and then they needed a change of lifestyle. So my parents moved inland to a place called Menduran near Coonabarabran, and we owned a pub there, actually. So my first few years, funnily enough,
was in a pub.
was in a pub. My first memories I can remember, like walking behind the bar there, and yeah, it was like a really small country town called Menduran. And then we moved to the Gold Coast when I was about 4, so I've been here ever since. And I lived sort of out near where Liam is now, out in Carrara, till I was about 16. And then I was always a clubby till about that age, and then I started surfing and then did the both till I was about 18 or something, and then went into surfing a bit more, focused on that.
So, mate, junior lifesaver, is that where your love of the ocean started? As like just swimming and paddling? I heard you're a pretty good paddler, mate.
Yeah, I was a pretty good paddler. I think I always focused on the board. I loved sports. I hated swimming. But, when you're in the surf club, they always made you do the swimming. And had to do swimming training every day. But, like, our age group was like Grant Hackett and Renee Faulkner, and you're like...
They can swim all right.
Yeah, they can swim all right. And I remember going to Busy Park every day, and Dennis Cottrell's there yelling at you, and I remember I hated it so much. I had tears in my goggles. I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I just focused on board, and then I won the Australian title in 98. And
is that a junior or open?
A junior title.
Yeah.
I'm 19 or something now. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think I did the Worlds that year, and I got 4th, and that was in the Opens. And my other friend Leon won that, and he was a junior as well. And then I sort of lost interest in that as you do, sitting at the beach all day. You'd know that more than anyone, and I had more fun catching waves on the board and surfing. So I just focused on that, really, not really wanting to do it as a career. I just had much more fun surfing.
Well, you had a bit of a career going on there, mate, in the air shows in the early 2000s. There was money everywhere, and you could travel around and do a few aerials and get some coin. That must have been fun, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that was fun. I don't see it as a surfing career, and I'd say the boys from Burleigh never called me a pro surfer or anything. As I said, I was a clubby, and I was ending, and that was about 18 to 20 and I was finishing school and I pretty much knew I was going to go to uni and spend my rest of my life working. So I was like, I was just working in a bar to get some money because I wanted to go and travel.
Yeah.
And the surfing stuff was on the side and I was doing some little modelling jobs on the side.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Surfer model or model surfer, mate? Which were you?
Yeah, I probably I don't know. I was doing extra work in movies and modelling. Little jobs came up and I was just trying to get money.
And you were a sponsored surfer as well.
Yeah.
Full sponsorship.
Yeah, and it was the time when there was a lot more money in the industry. So didn't have to go and do comps. I never really did that many. I did a lot of the air shows because I had fun at that.
Yeah.
Did a couple of QSs, but it was more, I was going to have a gap year after school before uni and I just wanted to see the world. So I saw there was QS comps around in different places. So I just picked random ones I wanted to see. I did one in New York, one in New Jersey, and then France and Spain and Portugal. And I sort of wanted to have a year off anyway. So
Pretty cool way to travel the world, really.
Yeah, it is. It was the best fun, you know. And a lot of your mates are there, and everyone was taking it serious. I really didn't care. I knew I was going to basically sit behind a desk for the next 40 years, so get that out of my system.
Well, mate, what actually led you to engineering? What sort of, I suppose as a youngster that got the passion for engineering?
I guess I was always pretty good at maths and physics at school, and it's sort of the most logical one you go into there. Always a bit of a book nerd. And I really, really didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished school.
Like everybody.
Like everyone. And I still don't. You know, I reckon only the last sort of 5 years I know what I really want to do. So I went into engineering because I knew that'd be a good base if I wanted to do anything. And sort of by the last sort of few years, I sort of found coastal engineering and that's, the ocean. So it was a good fit.
And what with your coastal engineering, what was your first coastal project that you actually had to do?
Out in the workforce?
Yeah, in the workforce. Yeah.
Trying to think. I was at the council for a little bit, and when I first sort of left, there was a long, big time in between actually working and the end of uni. But I think I was in this Gold Coast water section at council to begin with, actually. So it was really, really boring stuff.
So you're doing the canals, not the beach?
No, it was more like sewage pipes and.
Oh God, that must have been a nightmare, mate.
I hated it, but I needed to. You need to do your hours, as you know, and earn the stripes. And then I was actually the first sort of coastal project was with Gold Coast Water. I was working. Managing a project where they actually pumped the sewage out into the seaway. Oh,
right, the old seaway pipe that's
it's still there.
Yeah.
And then I was working on the council side, and then we hired a consultant called DHI, which is the Danish Hydraulic Institute.
Yeah.
And basically what we were trying to do is time the release of the sewage so it's not going to come back in.
And that's tertiary treated, that sewage, wasn't it?
Tertiary treated sewage, you could nearly drink it, but...
Ooh. Yeah,
but
anyway.
you wouldn't. Yeah. People have it, and that's another story.
Yeah.
But at the moment, because there's so many people moving to the Gold Coast, we can't get the water out. We can't treat it enough and get the water out to the deep ocean. And to build an ocean outfall will cost billions. So that project was to really focus on the times coinciding with the tide and the swell to make sure it mixes properly and gets out and not comes in. Yeah. And that's sort of when I was like, oh, this is cool. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I moved and then the guys that we hired, I said, look, I like this stuff. I want to start working for you. So that was a company called the Danish Hydraulic Institute. And what we did there is make, hydrodynamic models, how water moves, how waves move, wind. And I sort of went back and did a full traineeship for about 3 years. And I said, look, I'm willing to half my salary. I know.
So you took the sacrifice to actually do what you love.
Yeah, and I put my head down, and that's the hardest thing. I think I was having Mason at that time. So up at night, I was present. Like a lot was going on. I was probably doing 70, 80-hour weeks.
Wow.
But I was like, if anything you do, you put your head down.
And if you want it, it's not as hard.
No, and it was everything I was interested in, but it's obviously high level mathematics to make all these models and things. But it was all like how water moves. So there is a second nature in how you think about things and the waves. And I learned so much, like you get so many biases in your head as a surfer,
yeah,
how the ocean moves and
Yeah.
how things like that. But when you actually get into the science of it, you're like, wow, I can't believe I thought like that for so long, you know?
Wow, and you get the actual information. Now, when was your first sort of reef project? What was the first one you did anything with the reef and the surf involved?
Yeah, so the reef stuff is funny because, so when I was at that company, DHI, the council hired them there's always been a problem at Palm Beach with the erosion, and it's nothing, there's obviously been a lot of human development there. They've trained the Crumpin entrance, and people probably build houses way too close than they should have. That's pretty much the main problem there.
Yeah.
And they hired this company to come up with a concept of an artificial reef to sort of help with erosion. But they also needed the second objective was to not ruin the surfing amenity or the waves, because I think prior to that, there was a big community uproar because they were going to put just some straight reefs there.
Yeah, I remember that. That was heavy,
If anything, I was probably in the perfect position at that time because of my background in the surfing community to sort of convey, look, they're going to approach it a bit differently. So the company that I worked for, DHI, there was a really, really smart man called Simon Mortensen who I worked under. He came up with the concept of it, and we worked through that concept and did some modelling, gave it to council for them to sort of push through to construction. And then, funnily enough, I left that job and went to council for 6 months. And then they hired another company called Royal Haskoning, who do like the detailed design and how you build things and how it's going to get constructed. So I was at council for a while getting that project and the funding. And then I went to that company for the next 5 years. So I followed that project all the way through. And we were there. And then I was working with two other really, really clever coastal engineers, Evan Watterson and Heiko Lur. The funny thing is with coastal engineers, like they love surfing. They're mad surfers.
Yeah.
Like Simon, who I was talking about, he's a Danish guy, but he's the maddest surfer you'll ever see. He comes from this little place up in the North Sea.
Yeah.
He loves surfing, and same with Evan and Heiko. So I followed that project through to the detailed design with these other guys leading and working out how we're going to build it, what's the best material, how it's going to work with the budget, how are we actually going to construct it, working with these companies, because there's never been a real successful one. Not for waves.
That Main Beach one was a shocker, really.
Yeah, the Main Beach, and there's been a few of those bag reefs around the world, and it's hard because constructing anything in the surf zone is really hard, but working out the materials was probably the biggest thing. And like what we did at Palm Beach was actually make it out of rock, which is a natural material. It's worked in the past, and I mean, you probably surfed there.
Yeah. Was it supposed to be a surfing amenity though when it was built?
No, that's the second factor. So what we had to do was to stop the erosion.
Yeah.
And the second thing is we had to prove that we weren't going to ruin the waves or make them worse than they were.
Right.
So we've actually, like the company that, so funnily enough, going with those companies, I stayed with that company, Royal Haskoning, for 5 years. And then we made our own company after that, Evan and Heiko and myself, called Blue Coast, who now do the monitoring and did all the testing for the reef. So I followed it through 4 different companies.
Well, so you went from start to finish with all those companies.
And I was never like, it's not a one-person job.
But it's kind of like your little baby in a way.
Well, and it wasn't my brainchild.
Yeah.
I just had parts in it. But I got to see every part work and gave me a better appreciation, because there is huge parts to engineering, get a project like that underway. It's not just, let's just throw something together. You got to find the funding first and come up with an idea and work about all that political stuff, which I have no idea about. And then the contractual arrangements and lawyer stuff I have no idea about either. But I know the science. I know how to do the modeling and the testing. And then I had to go through that into the construction stuff and then testing after. So it's a whole encompassing project that I've sort of had my fingers in little bits of pie, but never, I have never been the lead.
Were you happy with the result?
I definitely was, and
I've surfed it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
And the beach hasn't eroded yet, so which is a good thing. And they're actually off the back of that one, the company Blue Coast, Evan and Heiko, doing another one in Albany in WA.
All right.
So I was with that, the pre-feasibility of that. Have you been to Albany?
No, I
Middleton
haven't,
Beach?
mate. No.
So it's the south coast of WA there. It's just roaring swells all the time. But they've got this one bay in the middle of town that it's just a big 500-meter closeout. But it's offshore every day. So, I mean, you could throw anything out there and it's going to be better than what they've got.
Yeah.
But what the town there wants, it's not actually for erosion. What they want there is to retain the young people in the community. Because to surf there, you've got to travel from the main town. You've got to travel at least 40 minutes each way.
And so no one's going to the businesses there, that sort of thing?
No, that's exactly right. And if you had a reef in the middle of town, it's going to have surfing contests there. People are going to travel and stop off because it's one of those middle in-between places between like Denmark and Esperance where they just drive through, younger people, van life things. So the council's actually really innovative in that they want to retain the youth and have that, and have surfing contests. Surfing WA's behind it. So that one's really interesting, and that one's getting under construction soon. And that my old company's been leading that. So I'm very interested to see how that one turns out.
Can you see even more of these reefs popping up? Like I reckon the Gold Coast is prime for a lot of it.
Oh, I think so. Definitely. And the council has done studies about doing more because it is the council. One thing about the Gold Coast Council is, they recognise the value that surfing brings to the community. And, there was this one study, I think in 2012 that they did, and it's based on when we had that big erosion event and there was no sand. And they actually worked out the numbers of like beach width, how much money is coming into the Gold Coast.
Oh, wow.
So that's why they pump sand. That's why it's the biggest, to be a coastal engineer, the Gold Coast is the best place for it because they're willing to throw money to innovate. We've got sand pumping jetties either side of the Gold Coast. The whole length of the Gold Coast is engineered when you really think about it.
It's all about sand.
Yeah, and it is. It's to keep those beaches there, keep the people on it. And surfing, as you know, it's huge on the Gold Coast. How many visitors we get? We're only living here because of surfing. If they did anything to stuff the waves up, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And that was one other big project that when I was at council in that sort of interim period that we came up with was the surf management plan. And what that does is basically it's like an EIA. So if any development happens on the coast, you actually have to prove that you're not going to ruin the waves out there.
Also, they can't decide, we're going to build a harbour at Kira and stuff like that.
Unless they say, well, we're going to create a better wave.
Which they can't.
Yeah, and that's the sort of thing that surf management plan has put in place. And now the Queensland government wants to adopt something similar. And other councils around the world are looking at that because the value of surfing to the Gold Coast is huge.
Well, like any time you go down when the Super Bank is on, you can see the value, like the shops and everything are cooking because there's all these people out surfing.
Yeah, and I don't think there is an exact number of people knowing who fly in for those swells, but it must be huge.
I reckon so.
It's if I live down in Sydney or something, and I just saw there's a swell up here, I can get up here for $60 and have a 3-day surf bender.
Yeah, well, when you think of it, mate, people spend thousands upon thousands to surf a wave. Because I've surfed around, probably not as much as you, but every time I surf somewhere, I go, I think Burleigh's better.
Yeah.
And like I live there.
But it's also because you can get the waves. You don't have to worry about the crowd. And I mean, that solitude thing is a big factor as well. But I'm sure you've paid to surf some wave pools, haven't you?
Yeah.
What's that cost per wave? And people are willing to do that. It's not cheap, but that shows you like what a reef could do, reefs or even changing the amenity, of any of these existing breaks we have, fixing up holes. So it wasn't cheap, but it's got a double advantage of of helping erosion, but it's helping the surfing. But you throw anything out in the ocean, the biodiversity is just the fishing there is unbelievable.
Well, I think you said to me once, it wasn't long after you'd actually finished the reef, you went out for a snorkel there and there was fish and everything there already, only a short time after.
I was surprised the seagrass grew in about 2 months. And
really?
I was like, like long seagrass. And I was like, I'm not a biologist, but it's booming out there. It's been a really good thing for the coast.
Now, you are like a numerical, what is it? Numerical?
No, that's how I started, numerical modeler. So
numerical modeler. So what does that do? Do you just basically data collection and analysis? Is that what it is?
Yeah, well, so basically it's making a computer model of how water moves.
Ah, right.
So it's like we'd make a model of the Gold Coast embayment with this is land, this is the water, and then we can throw on waves and we can throw on the tides coming in and out. And to calibrate those models or to make sure they're giving us the correct answer, what I do is also go out and collect data. So we'll throw out a wave buoy or current meter or a tide gauge, and we collect it for a month, and then we try and replicate those conditions in the model. So then we can say, all right, this model's doing what this did in these circumstances. Let's put a huge wave on here and see what happens to the shoreline or to a structure that we make, etc. Yeah.
Ah, cool. Now, mate, the next thing I want to get going on about Tuvalu, mate. You're yeah, it's an amazing project, mate. Like, water levels are rising. You'd know that, aren't you, with your numerical sort of thing? They are definitely rising. Is that correct?
Well, they definitely are, and. Yeah, I don't know if we want to go to the contentious part of it, but I know we have a lot of friends in our circle that love
wearing tinfoil hats.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm out there. I put the gauges out. I see it, and I guess the thing is to remember, it's not equal everywhere because the way the ocean is, it's not like a bathtub. It comes up like the warm water would like to pool somewhere else. The Earth's magnetic field is different in different places and stronger. And
it's not a sphere, the Earth, is it?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And you've got wind forces that are also happening. So where we are in Tuvalu is actually one of the highest rates. It's about 4.9 to 5 millimeters per year for the last 20 years. So that's huge. And it's an atoll. So an atoll is like a ring of coral, basically, with small lumps of sand around it and on those islands. So any change in that sea level, they're always living right there.
Yeah.
You notice it, and like my front doorstep where I live over there, you can see, a big swell will wash under my house.
So how long have you been there now? On and off, of course. You come
on and
home.
off. Yeah, it's been 4 years now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, coming and going about. Yeah, it's ending up about 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off now, but. Now that project's finished and another one's kicking off, I can sort of come and go as I please. But yeah, it's been probably 6 months of a year.
So you're on to the next stage now, are you? So you're creating more land. What basically did you do?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll get sort of. So as I said, I could go back to the sort of company stuff, but I was engaged by the United Nations Development Program. Essentially, they wanted to protect a shoreline in Tuvalu on the main island there, Funafuti, because when they have the king tides or the waves, it's just washing the houses away. And what they were going to do was just put another seawall there. Seawalls on these reef-mediated shores don't really last that long, and they're only there till the tide rises again, the sea level rises. So I was working with one sort of a mentor of mine, Dr. Arthur Webb. He's an expert in atolls, and sort of came up with this idea of dredging the sand out of the lagoon of these atolls, and bringing it ashore and raising the height to the predicted level in 2100 at least.
Yep.
And then we fortify the edge of that to stop the waves coming. So it's basically giving them high land. Yeah.
But what happens, I believe, I saw on 60 Minutes, you superstar, but the water actually coming through this island itself coming up. Is there any way to solve that, or?
No, it's just raising it. So an atoll is essentially, it's the remnants of a coral reef. So what would have happened millions of years ago, there would have been a volcano in the middle sticking up like you see in Tahiti or Bora Bora. So that's just at a different stage of its life cycle. And you have the coral ring around it. And then as the plates subside, the volcano goes down, but the coral wants to stay within a distance from the sea level there. Yep. So it will grow up, and then the coral breaks down from waves and parrotfish eating it and pulling out sand, and pushes sand up, as you see, the little bits of sand around there. And then essentially that inner circle of the atoll, the sand will push in there, and over millions and millions of years, that will fill itself up and become an island.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is taking that sand out of the middle and speeding the process up, pulling it up on the shores and bringing them up well above the tide. So essentially the people have been living out there, I think the evidence is about 2,000 to 3,000 years. So
wow.
And atolls, as I said, they're always at or just below sea level. So they've sort of coped with that, and the only way these islands get higher is from a cyclone breaking out the coral, throwing it up over the island. And then that will leave sand. It's not like our beaches here when we have a big storm, the sand comes off the beach and goes offshore and has a big storm bar. Over there, the sand gets broken up from the reef and gets thrown onto the island and makes the island higher. So we need to keep those processes there and understand how they work so we can design infrastructure to work with that. So as I said, the people of Tuvalu have been there for maybe 2,000 years. And what would happen in the past, these cyclones would wash through, or these king tides for 4 months would come through and wash their grass huts away, and the population and wash away their crops and their trees, and the population would dwindle, or they'd move to another place that's a bit higher. Yeah. Keep going until it's ambient again and the population rises. But now, in the year 2025, we can't really let that happen. There's infrastructure like schools and hospitals,
airport,
and runways that, these atolls, as I said, have always been about that level. But we now have the understanding of how these islands build themselves, and we have the technology to do this. So why don't we? And that's exactly how this project, dredging and reclamation's not a new innovation. You look at Dubai and you look at Maldives.
Yeah.
But for a country that's going, risking sea level rise, it really is the first time this has been done in the Pacific.
And how do the people receive it, the people of Tuvalu?
Yeah, they seem to really like it. It's obviously contentious because this is new land. They've never had new land, you know, and as you know, in the Pacific Islands and in a lot of other places, like every piece of land is accounted for through a family system or a marae or through, a chiefdom type thing. So when there's new land, it's difficult to know who it goes to.
Also, who does it go to?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And Tuvalu is a funny one because Tuvalu, the name Valu is a Polynesian word for the number 8.
Oh, right.
There's 8 islands in the group.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
so we're that main piece of the work. We did work on 3 islands, but the main one there where you see the reclamation that's on 60 Minutes is in Funafuti, which is the capital. So that's made up of, there's probably 60% of the population of the whole country's there. So there's people from outer islands living there, and that's where everything is. So when you're creating new land, everyone's like,
where's mine?
Who gets this? You know what I mean? So that's another tricky one because that wasn't really part of my project. I'm the engineer, you know.
Yeah, you're not the social engineer.
No,
you're the
coastal
coastal engineer.
Stuff is really interesting, but I think what they've done now is, and they saw the success of this and how easy it could be implemented. Donors are throwing money to keep doing it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So the Australian government's just thrown in another 20 million, and we're replicating what we just did 300 meters up the beach, making another 8 hectares of land. So this is like 10% of their country. You know?
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And there's more going, and there's a long-term plan to keep reclaiming. And, you know, it's as I said, it's not like the Maldives or Dubai. It's not for tourism. This is to keep a culture going, essentially. You know what I mean?
Because I saw the Australian government said, oh, yeah, you can come and move here, but that means the end of Tuvalu.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it is, well, a lot of people, will take that offer up, you know, and there's about, in that Falipili Union, there's about 280 a year can come over to Australia. And of course, if you're a young person over there, you want to do it. I mean, they're the same as anywhere. The internet's over there now. Like everyone's on their phones, like wanting to do TikTok stuff. Opportunities are in Australia, you know. Well, they're sitting here on a phone while they're in a hammock and there's a beautiful ocean, and I'm out there playing, loving it, you know. And it's the opposite. Oh, take us back to Australia. And I'm like, look what you've got here.
And it's a beautiful spot, but maybe in some way they could go to Australia, educate, and then come back and help out their fellow Tuvaluans.
That is another big social problem, because with all these projects that we do, there's always a component of capacity building in the country, and we give out scholarships for Australian universities, New Zealand universities, to the best high school students that are. But a big problem with that is they'll go over there and then never come back.
Ah, right.
So
yeah,
they
yeah.
won't get a better job, they get money, and they just send remittance back. So
Yeah.
you get a really aging population that's just living off remittance coming back from Australia, New Zealand, wherever. That's all over the Pacific or the third world, even, Philippines and things like that. So yeah, the social stuff is huge, but yeah, the engineering stuff's what's been keeping me interested.
Well, mate, it's a pretty awesome project and must be pretty fulfilling to do, to see all of that come to rise. But what do you see as the future for coastal engineering with reefs around Australia and across the world? Do you think it's just going to keep growing like surfing itself?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think for the reefs, definitely, it's a no-brainer. I mean, the benefits both ecologically and coastal engineering for the coast are there, but for surfing, like, there's just so much push in surfing, as you know. Look at the growth in wave pools, and it shows you what people are willing to pay that money. So I think it's a no-brainer.
Speaking of waves, are there waves over in Tuvalu?
Oh.
Can't tell.
It's an island in the middle of the ocean, mate. So there's waves breaking everywhere, as you know. So.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but it's obviously a little bit difficult to get to as well.
Very difficult. I mean, there's waves there, and I love it. But it's it's just, it's such a beautiful untouched place, and there's still no ATMs. There's no, I've got to take money out before I go there, and everything's in cash. There's no phone numbers. You have to take your own Starlink around.
Oh, right.
So it's very, I think, and there's probably nowhere else in the world sort of like that. And I think it's the last sort of, I don't think we're going to see that again. I'm one of the last generations that was living pre-internet, pre-social media, Yeah. So I still like being able to touch that every now and then and have a bit of solace and remember what life was like.
Well, that's pretty cool. And did your family go over there as well, mate?
My wife didn't. I think Lauren likes Lauren, she was born in Bali, and I think she's done her island time. She doesn't need to go to another one. Yeah. But Mason and Greta have come over. Mason's come over a couple of times. He didn't like it at the start, obviously, because he's so, they're used to this.
Technology dependent.
And then after a couple of days, he was out there on the runway because playing footy with the local boys, and he loved it, and surfing and spearfishing and out on the boat every day. It was great for him. That's what I wanted to do. And I took Greta as well the last trip on their school holidays. As I said, we're doing work on 3 islands. So there's another island from the main one. When you get there, it's another 24 hours on a boat to get there.
Oh, wow.
So it's in the middle of the ocean. It's in the middle of nowhere. So they'd never seen white kids out there before. So Greta was queen of the village. She loved it. And it was like we were living in the house in the middle of town, and then you'd wake up and this kid's just looking through the window in the morning. And but it was, I was really happy to give them that experience, because you may never see that again,
Yeah, that's awesome, mate. And are there other islands that this can be done? Like, there are other island groups?
So this was a sort of a pilot project, if you will. I don't know if you saw it, how we did it out of sandbags. Yeah. And essentially that's only a temporary measure, because sandbags are, they don't last forever. Yeah. But it was so as a comparison, if we did it out of rock, which is what you would do it out of, or concrete or steel, it's about 7 to 8 times more expensive. So if we did that, we'd only get 1/7 of the area done. So what we did was, it's sort of a ramped up reclamation, and we built it that way with the plan of it getting buried in the next 10 years under more projects happening, and then we'll fortify it properly. So as I said, it was a test project, and the direct islands, there's other atoll groups nearby. Kiribati is probably the one that's probably the most likely to happen next, or the Marshall Islands. And they're all very interested in seeing how this went. And they're actually going to come out and have a look, some of their ministers, to see how it was. So I think it's sort of provided hopes to those low-lying natures, and because a lot of those ones, Tuvalu is only 11,000 people. Whereas Kiribati is, there's 100,000 on the main island.
So I saw you got modelling. So, mate, if with you have done nothing with Tuvalu or some of these other islands, if nothing gets done, how long till they disappear as such?
Well, as I said, they were always going to stay at sea level. Like there's evidence that the reef will keep growing. But what that means for the population is this is going to be like, as you saw there, underwater.
Yeah.
Just underwater more under the tides. Cyclones will come through, throw some debris up. But they're just going to be living in squalor and disease-ridden areas, and it's not going to be that nice. So, if that doesn't keep growing at the moment, by 2100, 95% of that island will be underwater.
Wow.
And by 2050, it's something like 60%. So, and I can already see in the modelling that we've done of that, the areas that the tide's coming up through there. So, yeah, it's not it's not a joke.
Yeah, no, it's pretty serious. So, mate, that's pretty awesome, the work you're doing. And mate, one more thing, where's your favourite wave in the world? Seeing you've been everywhere.
Burley, of course.
Yeah,
mate.
I know it is, mate. It's my favourite wave in the world too. Mate, yeah, it's a pleasure, man. It's great to see, mate. You've done lots of great work, like now you're over in Tuvalu. You've done great work with Burley Board Riders, mate. So a pleasure to have you on the Green Room, James.
No worries, mate.
Cheers,
Thank
buddy.
you.
Cheers. James Lewis here on the Green Room. Thanks for tuning into the Green Room. A big thank you to our guests for sharing their stories and insights, our producer Sarah, and Podfire for bringing this podcast to life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a review, and share the Green Room with your friends. We'll catch you next time for more conversations with the legends of surf and beyond. Until then, catch you in the waves.